Alright, welcome to the Topic 6 Part A study guide. Well, we will start working this out step by step and explaining everything that we need to know, hopefully. So here we go. Number 1 says, how do you find an x-intercept? Well, x-intercepts are on the x line, which means every x-intercept has a y value of 0. So how do we find it? We plug 0 in for y with the equation they give you, with the equation given. And that's it. That's what we do every single time we want to find an x-intercept. We make the y equal to 0. All right, on number 2. Number 2 here is asking us, they give us some information, so you're going to have to read it on your own, but they want to know which will be more difficult for Steve to run up. So First Avenue has you going up 3, and then going horizontal 1. So if we're talking about slope, which is rise over run, that would be a slope of 3 over 1, which is equal to 3. 16th Avenue has you going up 1 and over 3. So if we're doing slope, which again is rise over run, that would be 1 over 3, which is 1/3. So therefore, this slope is less, which means it's less steep. Therefore, it's easier. Just like when you're climbing a mountain, you would want something less steep to make things easier. The steeper it is, the harder it is to climb. Okay, on to our next one. Again, this is a word problem, so you have to read it on your own. It says, what is the rate of change for the modus building? So the modus says you climb 22, and you have horizontal of 15. So this again is really just talking about the rising over the running. So the modus is, let me get rid of that. The modus rise is a 22 because that's you climbing, and the run is a 15. So that's our modus building. And then we take a look at Sears Tower, and it says that we climb 17 for every 7 feet of travel. Alright, so this was part A, this was part B. Part C says which one of these will be easier to climb. Again, we want easy means less slope. So this one's a little bit harder to see, so let's convert these to mixed numbers. This would be 1 and 7/15, while this one would be 2 and 3/7. Therefore, this is your smaller number, which means you have less slope, so therefore the modus is going to be easier to climb than it is the Sears. Alright, on to number 4. Now we're done with the word problems. It says find the slope between -3, -2, and -5, 4. So we know that slope is equal to the y change over the x change. So the x changes, to get from a -3 to a -5, you would have to subtract 2. And then to get from a -2 to a +4, you would have to, you would have to add 6. So the y change, remember this is x, this is y, the y change is a 6, the x change is a -2, and that reduces down to a -3. So our slope there is a -3. On to number 5. They want you to write something in slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So it says that the slope is 15. So that's your slope number, so we put a 15 in for the m. The y-intercept is -12. That's always your standalone, so -12. And then y equals 15x minus 12. Simple as that. On to number 6, they want us to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So 3x minus 15y is equal to 30. So again, we have said that for intercepts, someone has to be 0. Well, if you're looking for x, you have no idea what x is. So the 0 cannot be the x. The 0 has to be your y. So we're going to take this 0 and we're going to plug it into our equation where there's our y. So we have 3x minus 15 times 0 is equal to 30. Well, negative 15 times 0 is nothing, so it disappears. So you have 3x equals 30. Divide each side by 3, and you get x is equal to 10. So that's your x-intercept. Now for your y-intercept, since you're looking for y, that means the 0 can't be the y, the 0 has to be your x. So we're going to take this 0 and plug it in here for our x value. So 3 times 0 minus 15y is equal to 30. 3 times 0 makes it just disappear completely. So you're at negative 15y equals 30. To get the negative 15, we divide, and we get a negative 2. So our y-intercept is at 0, negative 2. So remember, for intercepts, someone has to be 0. Who's the 0? It's the thing you're not looking for. All right, if we take a look at number 7, you're going to have to look at your picture on this one because I can't draw the picture in here. But you've got one line at the top who is Camilla. And then you have another line underneath who is Lydia. And so they ask you what statements are true. And the only thing, it's going to be hard to show this one, so I'm just going to tell you what the answers are. Your answer should be the first box, the third box, and the fifth box. And if you don't understand why those are your answers, make sure you see me in class. But it's just too hard to explain without seeing the picture on the screen here. So we're going to skip straight on down to number 8. Now number 8, we have a picture, and they ask us to find the slope. So one way we could do it is we could do rise over run, where we do the counting, or we could again just do our XY chart. We've got 0, 2, we've got 2, 1. So to get from a 2 to a 1, you subtract 1. To get from a 0 to a 2, you add 2. So the Y change goes on top, so negative 1 over 2, which is equal to negative 1/2. And that's what your slope is. Moving on to page 3, we're already on number 9, so you can see how quick these questions are if you know what you're doing. We have negative 4x plus 2y is equal to 12, and they ask us to graph this. And it says only using the intercepts. So again, we're going back to that problem of can we find an x-intercept and can we find a y-intercept? So an x-intercept, I'm looking for x, so that means the 0 has to be in the y spot. So we take our equation, we put the 0 in the y spot, and we get negative 4x equals 12, so therefore x is equal to negative 3. So we have our x-intercept. Then we go to our y-intercept. For the y-intercept, I'm looking for y, so therefore the x is the 0. So we have negative 4 times 0 plus 2y is equal to 12. So 2y equals 12, which means y is equal to 6. So now you've got everything you need to make your graph. And I'm going to make a really quick sketch here. So the x-intercept's at negative 3, so we'll say this is at negative 3. The y-intercept's up here at 6, so this is at 6. And then draw your line, put your arrows, and you've got your graph. All right, number 10. It says rewrite 4x plus 3y equals 6 in slope-intercept form. Well, remember, slope-intercept form, the way you know that, if you're in the correct format for slope-intercept, is the y is by itself. So that's all we're doing here. We got to get this y all by itself. So we've always gotten rid of our standalone numbers first. So to get rid of 4x's, we subtract 4x's, and we do it to both sides. So now I have 3y is equal to negative 4x plus 6. Now I've got this 3, which is multiplying. So to undo multiplication, we do the opposite, which is division. So we divide both sides by 3. Negative 4 divided by 3 can't do it, so we leave it as an improper fraction. And 6 divided by 3, which gives us a positive 2. The y is by itself, so I'm in slope-intercept form. Moving on to number 11. Number 11, they want slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And we have to go through the point negative 2, 1, and a slope of 3. Well, now we have an issue. This is a y-intercept, which means it's a 0, number here that goes in. Well, that's not a 0, a number, so you can't do slope-intercept. So what we do, that we've talked about in class multiple times, is we're going to start in point slope, because I have a point and I have a slope, so I'm going to start in that format. And again, remember, point slope is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Pay careful attention to these minus signs. Okay, that means use the opposite numbers. So I see a -2 as my x-coordinate. That's my x1. So I'm going to use the opposite of a -2, which means I'm going to put in a +2. My y1 is a +1, so I'm going to use the opposite of a +1, which is a -1. And my slope is 3. So again, it's not what they want. But I'd give you half credit on Friday's test if you get to this point. But they want it in slope-intercept, which means the y has to be by itself. So let's fix that. Let's get the y by itself, because then we're in the format that they want. So we're going to distribute. So now I have y minus 1 equals 3x plus 6. Now to get rid of a -1, we add 1. And I have y equals 3x plus 7. Y is by itself, and now I'm in slope-intercept form. And see that this 7 is not this 1. That's why we couldn't go straight to slope-intercept, because I did not give you the y-intercept for that question. Okay, moving on to number 12. It says write an equation of line. This time they want it in point-slope form, which is great because that's the easiest form. And they give us 2 points, 3, -1, and 2, 4. So you've got the point. You actually got 2 points to pick from, so we have way more than enough information for that, but I don't have the slope, so you've got to find it on your own. So we do what we did earlier on our test, our study guide. So to get from a 3 to a 2, you subtract 1. To get from a -1 to a 4, you add 5. So therefore our slope is, remember, the y stays high, so we have 5 over -1, which is -5. Now you've got 2 points to pick from, so I'm going to give you both answers. So remember, point slope is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Key thing being these minus signs that we use the opposite symbol. So here I see a 3 for my x value, so I'm not going to use 3, I'm going to use -3. Here I see -1 for my y value, so I'm not using -1, I'm using a +1. And then my slope is a -5. But maybe you said I wanted to use 2 and 4. That's fine. I see 2 for my x value, so I use the opposite, which is a -2. I see a 4 for my y, so I use the opposite, which is a -4. And the slope is still a -5. So that's why I would take either of these answers on Friday's test. Moving on to 13. It says graph a line with a y-intercept of 1 and a slope of -2/3. So you're going to get your graph out. You're going to put a y-intercept at 1, so we're going to call this 1. Slope is -2/3. That's your rise over your run. That negative can only go with one of those numbers. I always put it with the top number. So -2/3. So now I've got directions. I'm going to go down 2, so 1, 2. Then I'm going to go over +3 because that's a +3. So 1, 2, 3. So I go over 1, 2, 3. And that puts me at 3, -1. And this was at 0, 1. Now some people like to put the negative with the bottom number. So let me show you what you would have did if you did it this way. You would have gone up 2 units, and then you would have gone left 3 units. But if you do it that way, which is fine, it puts you at -3, 3, you'll realize that it's still the exact same line. The line is going to go through all these points. You only have to give me 2 of them, but I just wanted to put both scenarios down because some people graph differently. Number 14. We've got y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 3. Now identify the equation. We're never going to change equations when graphing. We're always just going to use what they give us. This is in point-slope form. So we're going to pull off the point and we're going to use the slope. So I see a -3 with the x. So that means we use the opposite. So it's a +3. I see a +1 with the y, so I'm going to use the opposite, which is a -1. The slope is our number in front, which is a 2/3. I've got everything I need to make my graph. So I go to my graph, put a point at 3, -1, which is right here. Slope is 2/3, so I'm now going to go up 2 because that's the rise, and now I will run 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that puts you right here, which ends you up at 6, 1. Then just connect your dots, and you're done with the graph. Make that a bigger point. We didn't change the equation, we used the equation to our advantage. So never change equations when graphing, just use what they give you. Alright, number 15, we have 2y equals 5x minus 4, and they want this in standard form. Which remember, standard form, I'm going to write it once so you can refer back to this throughout the rest of the study guide. No fractions. X and y, same side. And for the bonus point, this is something only Algebra 2 students have to do, the x term is positive. So let's deal with number 1, no fractions. Check. Done. 2, x and y, same side. That's not done. They're on opposite sides. So I want to get rid of the x's on the right, because that's going to move them over to the left. So now I have -5x plus 2y equals -4. That gets you full credit. You will get all of your credit for this on the test Friday. But if you want the bonus, I need the x to be a positive. So if I multiply this by a -1, that turns that into a positive 5x, which I'm allowed to do. It's like a fraction buster, as long as I do it to every thing in my question. So 2y times -1 is a -2y, -4 times -1 is a positive 4, and that gets you a bonus point on your test. 16, same thing, we want standard form, so we have y minus 1/2 equals -2 x minus 5. Well, before I can move things around or even get rid of fractions, I have to use my distributive property. So let's do that first. So I have y minus 1/2 equals -2x. Now careful, -2 times a -5 is a positive 10. Now we'll do standard. First thing was no fractions. Well, I've got a fraction, a 2. So I use that 2 against itself. I'm going to multiply this by 2, which means they cancel each other out, so you're left with the -1. I'm allowed to do this as long as I do it to every term. So 2 times y is 2y, 2 times -2 is -4x, 2 times 10 is 20. So standard 1 done, no fractions. Standard 2, x and y same side. Well, they're not, so let me get those x's back on the left. So I'm going to add 4x to both sides. So now I have 4x plus 2y minus 1 equals 20. Well, this minus 1 needs to be over here with its 20, so we need to move it over. So we do that by adding 1 to each side, and you get 4x plus 2y equals 21, and that gets you a bonus point because the x is a positive. If you had -4x minus 2y equals -21, you would still get full credit for your answer. 17. We need to go through -3, 5, and we have to be parallel to the graph y equals 2x minus 4. So remember, parallel means same slope, but different y-intercepts. So I look here and I realize that the slope is 2. I have a point, I now have a slope, so I'm going to make this easy because it doesn't say what form to write the equation in. I'm going straight to point slope because that's the quickest, easiest way. So I have a value of 5 for y, so I use a minus 5 because we use the opposite. Slope is 2. I have a negative 3 for x, so I use a positive 3. Full credit. If you used a different form, that's okay, but I'm not going to go through all the answers you could get, but that's the first one. That's the quickest and easiest to get to. 18. We're going through negative 4 comma 6. This time we have to be perpendicular to y equals 2/3 x minus 5. Perpendicular. You have to be the negative reciprocal slope, or what some people like to refer to as the opposite flip slope. So here's how we do this. The line that we have to be perpendicular has a slope of 2/3. So we have to be the opposite. So this is a positive. So the opposite of a positive is a negative. Now we have to flip it. 3/2. Now we have what we need. We have a slope, which is negative 3/2. We have a point. So you guessed it, I'm going to go to point slope form. I see a 6, so I use a minus 6. Put in my slope. I see a negative 4, so I put in a plus 4. All right, 19. Here's the original question that they give you. Y equals 2x minus 8. And the questions are going to follow up asking us if we're parallel or perpendicular to this line. So we have to use the slope, which is equal to 2. So here's part A. They give us negative 6x plus 3y equals 10. Well, we can't do this. Is standard form. And when you're in standard form, you don't know the slope. So what we have to do is transfer to slope-intercept, which we talked about earlier, is really just saying, hey, get the y by itself. So let's do that. So to get rid of this minus 6x, I would add 6x to both sides. So now I have 3y equals 6x plus 10. Now to get rid of this 3, which is a multiplier, I divide. So now I have y equals 2x plus 10/3. So this 2 is my slope. The 10/3 is my y-intercept. This equation had a slope of 2 and a y-intercept of negative 8. So therefore, same slope, different y-intercepts means you are parallel. Then we go to B, which is much quicker and easier. B says y equals 1/2 x plus 5. Well, since we're in slope-intercept form, we've got the slope right away, no calculation necessary. So I have a slope of 1/2 for this line, and our original line, remember, had a slope of 2. So you might think they're perpendicular because they're reciprocals, but notice how these are both positive numbers. To be perpendicular, you have to be opposite flips, not just the flip, but the opposite sign as well. So therefore, this is neither. All right, finally onto our back page. On number 20, we have the graph of x equals 3. This is the easiest graph, but is often the most missed. Look, they're saying that the x value has to be 3. So go to your x line, put a point at 3. Now you've got to figure out where another point would be. Well, this says the x is a 3. So come up with another point that has an x value of 3, like 7. So if I did 3, 7, that would be way up here. So therefore, this is a vertical line. That is the vertical line, x equals 3. When we do 21, same thing, but just this time they give you a y now. So y equals negative 2. So I go to my graph. I go to the only thing they tell me that the y is negative 2, which is right here. That's one point. I need a second point to make a line. Well, they say the y is negative 2, so put a negative 2 there. Well, what's the x? Anything you want it to be. So I'm going to go with 1. So 1 comma negative 2. So 1, negative 2 is right here, so it is a horizontal line. That is y equals negative 2. And finally, number 22, slope of a vertical line. So let's do this. Here's a vertical line. Slope is the rise over the run. I'm going to pick a point, I don't know, let's say the rise is 1, 2, 3. This number does not matter whatsoever because the run has to be a 0. When you type in your calculator 3 divided by 0, it is going to say error. We do not write error. We write the word undefined. If it was a horizontal line, your rise number would have been the 0, and let's say the run number was a 3. Well, if you do this on a calculator, 0 divided by 3 does give you 0. So that's what a horizontal line is. Also, here's a trick. The word horizontal has a Z, Z for 0, and it has O's, which look like zeros. So I hope this has been helpful, and good luck on Friday.